My name is Tom Slay. I will be chairing proceedings today. Today we have one substantive item, which is the planning application and listed building consent for the redevelopment of Liverpool Street Station. Before we move to that part of business, I'm going to hand over to the clerk.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. As you are aware, the public element of today's meeting is being live streamed, and those participating in the meeting have given consent to their inclusion. The recording will be available on the City Corporation's YouTube channel following the meeting, and it shall be retained for up to 1 civic year. Whilst we endeavour to live stream all our public meetings, technical difficulties may sometimes prevent live broadcast. In these instances, we aim to upload a recording after the end of the meeting. All personal data will be processed in accordance with the Data Protection Act 2018, and for any further information on that, please feel free to contact us. Please be aware that microphones will be on at a low level at all times, and background sounds could be picked up. Would you like me to talk about the membership?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Just one note at the beginning of the agenda about the membership of the subcommittee. The subcommittee is asked to note a change in the membership of the Planning and Transportation Committee, and therefore of this subcommittee, in that Stephen Hodgson has been appointed to membership in place of Deputy Jaspreet Hodgson. The Town Clerk can confirm that Stephen has received the necessary training to enable him to take part in the consideration of planning applications.
Thank you, Town Clerk, and welcome, Stephen. Item 1, apologies. I've received apologies from Deputy John Edwards, Deputy Marianne Fredericks, Josephine Hayes, Alderwoman Elizabeth King, Deputy Charles Edward Lord, Tim McNally, Deputy Nigat Qureshi, Deputy Deborah Oliver, and Deputy Dawn Wright. I understand at least 2 of them are unwell, so I'm sure we all send them our very best wishes and hope they get well soon. Are we aware of any others?
No, I'm not, Chairman.
Very good. Item 2 is members' declarations. Do any members have any declarations to make with respect to items on the agenda today? Seeing none, we move on to item 3, which is page 5 of your first pack. I'm now going to ask if anyone has any corrections or matters arising from the minutes of the meeting on 28th of October. There being none, I think we can therefore approve those minutes. Before we move on to consider today's application, just a reminder that I'm sure members know we do need to consider planning applications such as this on their own merit and in accordance with our planning policy on the basis of evidence relevant planning issues, which are presented to them and are, of course, in your officer's pack. You do need to be present for the entirety of the meeting in order to be able to vote for it. And so just with that in mind, I'm going to now move on formally to item 4, which is a site comprising Liverpool Street Station, 50 Liverpool Street, Sun Street Passage, etc. And we're going to be taking the planning application and the listed building consent together. Now, earlier on today, you will have received an addendum pack by email. However, an additional shorter pack, which has been tabled, has been made available. Just to be clear, there is not a legal obligation for these to be appended to planning papers. It's something that we choose to do in the city because we think it's good to have as much available. That said, having read it through and I see some significant repetition and sufficient patterns, that I deem it sufficient for members to have about 10 minutes now to read through the pack in front of you. I'm seeing nods around the table. So we're just going to pause, sit quietly, sit to read, and then in 10 minutes' time we will start again at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and understanding. So let me explain the order of business henceforth. First of all, there will be an officer presentation that will take you through the reasoning and the judgments they have made that have brought them to a recommendation for us of approval. Then objectors will have 10 minutes to address the members. Then members will have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions of the objectors. Then the applicants and supporters will have 10 minutes, similarly opportunity for questions. Then 2 elected members from the ward of Bishopsgate, Deputy Ben Murphy and Simon Burrows, will then address the committee. They also have 10 minutes between them. At that point, we have the opportunity for a debate, should we wish to have a debate, and then I will take us to a vote on the application. So I would like to ask Kieran to come to the microphone to make your presentation. Kieran.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. So this presentation concerns development at Liverpool Street Station and a planning application for the enhancement of the station and the construction of an overstation development. The same agenda item includes recommendations concerning 5 associated listed building consents, which are coupled with this main planning application. You will have seen a long version of this PowerPoint presentation already. This is a distilled version that serves as an aid memoir. And these applications are subject to an extensive officer's report. And of course, you will have received 2 addendum reports earlier today. So these slides show the extent of the site subject to the recommendation today. It comprises Liverpool Street Station here. On the left is shown the red line boundary at the upper concourse level, and on the right, the lower concourse level. The application also includes works within TfL ticket halls, which are within the station, as well as works related to platform level access to TfL assets. These are existing images of the Hope Square entrance on Liverpool Street on the left-hand side. The left-hand image also shows the western flank of 50 Liverpool Street. And on the right-hand side, there is the Bishopsgate entrance. You'll note as well that in both of these images, they show the existing lack of step-free access, the stairs leading to both of these entrances. Further existing imagery shows the other boundaries of the site. To the west, and shown in the top images, is Sun Street Square with the adjacent TfL bus station. And in the bottom left shows a view back to the train shed of Liverpool Street Station from Exchange Square. This slide then shows the site shaded in red in the top right here in the context of its designations, and particularly those related to heritage. This shows that the northern end of the site falls within the LVMF protected viewing corridor. An additional policy designations not shown here, but include the site's location in the central activities zone, a key area of change, part of the site falling within a principal shopping centre, and also identified within a spatial policy in the emerging City Plan 2040, Policy S25 concerning Liverpool Street. Here we have a closer plan of the heritage context of the site, again shaded in red. The site encompasses the Grade 2 listed Liverpool Street Station, with the southern section of Liverpool Street Station, or the southern section of the site falling within the Bishopsgate Conservation Area. The conservation area, shaded in blue here and indicated by the 1, extends along the eastern side of Bishopsgate, but the majority of the station train shed is located outside the conservation area. Along the boundary of the site to the south is the former Great Eastern Hotel, also known as the Andaz Hotel, which is Grade 2 star listed. Further south along Bishopsgate is the Grade 2 star listed Church of St Botolph. There are also a number of non-designated heritage assets nearby, including 50 Liverpool Street, shown earlier, which features the McDonald's at the ground floor level, which adjoins the former Great Eastern Hotel along the station's southern boundary. The Metropolitan Arcade, which falls within the site but located opposite the station on Liverpool Street. And the Kinder Transport Memorial Statue, which is located to the south of the station within Hope Square at the station on an entrance on Liverpool Street. This slide then shows the evolution of the station over time from its first phase of construction in the Victorian period. The extent of demolition works carried out during the 1990s redevelopment is in one of the central images and shaded in red. Note the 1990s work include the creation of a new facade to Liverpool Street and replacement of the eastern train shed with the overstation development at numbers 133 to 135 Bishopsgate. This diagram shows the station itself in more detail, and shown in orange is the original Victorian train shed in the left-hand side of this image, shaded in orange, which comprises the northern end of the site. Shown in yellow and further to the right is the 1990s redevelopment of the station, which includes the southern half of the train shed. The main concourse and station entrances to Liverpool Street and Bishopsgate are also shaded in yellow. Please note that these entrances, along with 50 Liverpool Street and the interior retail units within the station, were identified by Historic England as not of special interest, and these elements are identified in red. Shown in blue is the Grade 2-star former Great Eastern Hotel, known as the Andaz, and shown in green is the Metropolitan Arcade I'd referred to earlier, which is a non-designated heritage asset. This slide also shows as a blue dot the Grade 2 listed police box, which is subject to a recommendation today. These images on the left-hand side and the plan here with the numbers and key indicate the various historic listed monuments, memorials, and decorative historic relics found within the station. These include the Grade 2 listed Great Eastern War Memorial, the Grade 2 listed East Anglian War Memorial, and the Grade 2 listed police call box I just referred to. Additionally, the site includes the Firdas Kind statue, which is inside the station at lower concourse level, as well as the Kinder Transport statue located in Hope Square. Other architectural relics include the stone piers to Hope Square, as well as the cartouches to the entrance towers, which are replicas of fabric demolished or removed from the site as part of the 1990s redevelopment works. This slide indicates some of the structures which are the subject of applications for listed building consent also before you today. As part of the application submission, the applicant has submitted a station needs assessment, which goes into detail as to the operational lackings at the station now, and this is backed up by modelling that's been undertaken and submitted with the application. These images determine or show the current situation at the station with regards to passenger and pedestrian density and flow in the station. The top two images show the existing circumstance at morning and evening peaks, and as you can see here, the colours range from red through orange, yellow, green, light blue and blue, where the darkest blue is the freest amount of passenger or pedestrian flow, progressing to red, which is where is described as a complete breakdown of flow within the station. The bottom images show the significant worsening of the circumstance, of the existing circumstance, up to 2041. Where the significant yellow and orange patches representing substantial overcrowding and the red areas showing a complete breakdown of pedestrian flow. The station needs assessment has also highlighted that the station has experienced 2.7 times higher passenger numbers since 1997, or as expected. It states that the station will need to accommodate an estimated increase from 97 million passengers at the time of the application submission to 131 million passengers by 2041. The same report also sets out the operational failings at the existing station, of which I'll list the lack of station facilities, no provision for a centralised station operations control room, lack of coherent wayfinding and inadequacy of information provision to passengers, low quality of cycle parking facilities, the lack of waiting areas for passengers, and this is in addition to the numerous accessibility issues throughout the station, which include no step-free access, and inadequate lifts within both the station and the interchange routes to London Underground lines. Moving then to the proposals, the image to the right describes the areas of demolition proposed to the lower concourse level, which includes demolition of elements of TfL Ticket Hall B, which is shown shaded in red at the bottom of the right-hand image. The demolition of the southern retail units, which run across east-west on the northern part of the station concourse at upper concourse level, the stairs and escalators to the lower concourse, and the existing southern concourse. To the north of the concourse, demolition takes place within the modern service yard area, which can be shown here on the right-hand side, running north to south and parallel to the platforms, and to the lower level of Sun Street Passage, which is shown here on the left. It is important to note here that both these areas, the service yard area and Sun Street Passage, have undergone change as a result of the earlier interventions and the 1990s works. Similar to the previous, but in the proposed circumstance, similar to the image previously shown, these are the areas at the upper concourse level which would be demolished. So this would be the demolition of the majority of the existing station's southern 1990s transept roof and columns, including the station retail units at this level, the demolition of the ramp and stair at Sun Street Passage level, the station entrances, including 50 Liverpool Street. And I'll note here that the application has been the subject of over 4,000 representations to date, with the majority of these, circa 3/4, received an objection to the scheme. The matters raised in objection to the scheme are summarised in the report and now summarised in the addendum reports, with the representations available in total as background papers to this agenda item. Principally, these include objections by the heritage sector to the heritage harm caused by the proposals and by the level of demolition proposed, as well as townscape impacts. Other matters also raised in objection include those made on sustainability grounds, those raising concerns around embodied carbon, and additionally, impact on amenity during construction and following completion of the development. I'd also note Historic England in their response confirmed that they did not object to the proposals, while identifying a range of less than substantial harms which are detailed in the officer's report. Additionally, the GLA have not objected to the scheme. As the officer's report identifies, the proposals would cause a high level of less than substantial harm to the station. Details on how this has been mitigated through the design and clearly and convincingly justified are set out in the officer's report. The proposal includes significant enhancements to the station and includes interventions to mitigate station capacity issues in the future and improve overall functionality and offer at the station. This increases connectivity to the wider city as well, which I'll go into in later slides, and is in response to the numerous identified failings at the current station summarised earlier in this presentation. These include interventions such as an enhanced gate line, increasing the number of ticket gates, concourse expansion at lower and upper levels. In particular, this includes a 19% increase in concourse space at the lower concourse level, which is where the majority of passengers wait for trains. There are vertical circulation upgrades, including new lifts, but this would also include 6 additional escalators, including flow through and into the station. There were new entrances at Hope Square, Bishopsgate, Sun Street Passage, and Exchange Square, all of which would be step-free. There would be new and improved station passenger facilities, which includes a vast increase in toilet numbers, the inclusion of changing places, new quiet spaces, and family rooms. And this would also include new retail provision running north to south and running parallel to the station platforms at upper concourse level. There would also be a new public cycle hub for station users, which would sit below Sun Street Passage. There would be signage and wayfinding enhancements, and there would be an upgrade to station security, including new areas for Network Rail and TfL operational facilities. The proposals also include step-free access to all London Underground assets, which officers consider a significant benefit. This slide then shows some of the location of some of these enhancements, and this is at a lower concourse level. On the left-hand side, and in white, labelled here, improved ticket hall B, I'd note that this also includes an improved gate line at this TfL entrance and step-free access, as well as an adjacent waiting area for the station, which adds further space to the concourse and increases its resiliency. The lifts shown here, adjacent to Ticket Hall B and the Bishopsgate entrance, comprise 4 25-person lifts, which is a significant increase over the station's current provision of a single 4-person lift. This level additionally includes public toilet provision and a public waiting area. This slide then shows Ticket Hall B, the TfL Ticket Hall B, and the enhancements in detail, which includes a reduction in the number and size of large internal columns in the existing circumstance, which is in part achieved through the demolition of 50 Liverpool Street, the inclusion of a new ramp, adjacency to upper concourse level escalators, which now feed from Hope Square, meaning a reduction in cross-flow between people accessing the station and utilising this ticket hall, and as mentioned previously, adjacent lift access from upper concourse level. This slide then shows the enhancements at upper concourse level, which includes step-free access at Hope Square and Bishopsgate, public toilets, changing places, and a new waiting area, with further on the next slide. And at both upper and lower concourse levels, there would be accessibility lounges, which on the lower level include a quiet corner. Both levels have changing places, improved toilets, and a family room, in addition to a significant uplift in the provision of toilets overall. Located at the lower concourse level would be the proposed cycle hub, which would accommodate 732 cycle parking spaces and would be accessed from Sun Street Passage. This number is compliant with London Plan policy. And this slide shows the improvements to the bus station waiting area and information point, where currently is interrupted by the access that provides the upper concourse level with a route through to Sun Street Passage, would now feature a full waiting area, including an information desk and seating, as well as new public information or information for public. Following on from those heat diagrams used earlier in this presentation, this left-hand side shows the scenario in 2041, plus 35% to provide resiliency for the proposals. And on the right-hand side is shown the improvement in that circumstance as a result of the proposed works. And this slide illustrates the range of new accesses that have been provided through the proposals. So this includes Sun Street Passage, routes through to Exchange Square, east-west routes from Bishopsgate through to the Broadgate complex, and entrances onto Hope Square and Liverpool Street, all of which shown here would be provided as step-free. These plans then show the new seating areas and waiting areas that have been provided. They're at lower concourse level and upper concourse level. And they've been provided in areas which do not interrupt pedestrian flow at the important areas of the station. And then this slide then shows the difference in retail offer, which forms a significant part of the proposals. The image in the top right shows the existing poor quality 1990s retail offer, which blocks views from the concourse down through into the train shed. The bottom images are CGIs indicating when that, as proposed, that 1990s retail offer being removed and then being replaced by retail spaces running parallel to the platforms at upper concourse level. This is associated with spill-out seating, where widths of 3 metres and 6 metres clear for passenger movement and pedestrian movement on the east and west and east respectively is provided. And this will result in the station providing a new offer as a destination and somewhere to dwell, with resulting benefits to the city and the surrounding area. In doing so parallel to the tracks, this is achieved without compromising the main concourse space. And here's a visual from the interior of the lower concourse, looking towards the new ticket hall B with the decluttered concourse. The proposal does entail demolition of the 1990s roof and southern concourse, including the supporting trusses and columns, while the northern portion of the 1990s roof would remain, noting the impacts of this demolition are addressed in full in the officer's report. A new functional load-bearing station roof, comprised of structural trusses and arches, as well as columns, which reinterprets the Victorian language of the original train shed, would be erected in its place. The design would maintain the height and volume of the existing station roof through building to the same height as the original roof's central pitch. The proposed columns within the concourse follows in the Victorian tradition, being forged from metal and designed to share the same typical components of Victorian columns, while also being octagonal in plan form as the existing columns are. The position of the columns has been carefully considered and would largely share the alignment of the existing, ensuring that views across the station from north to south and east to west are clear and that they do not impede pedestrian or passenger movement. This placement also helps to maintain the lofty, cathedral-like quality of the existing station roof. The proposals would also maintain an area of glazed roof at the interface with the former Great Eastern Hotel, labelled the Andaz Hotel in this image in the top right here, which includes a setback of between 5 to 8 metres, and to enable as much natural light as possible to reach the concourse. These images now show the proposed new station entrance onto Bishopgate, internally and externally, with both images illustrating the cathedral-like character and scale of the entrances proposed, which would clearly mark the station entrance and the experience of arriving at the lower concourse. The entrances themselves would be formed of large vaulted brick archways, which reinterpret a more traditional railway station language, where the entrance threshold is defined by robust masonry with steel train sheds behind. The exact geometries of these highly expressive archways come from a combination of the existing character of the station's arches and the spans and structural composition of the train sheds. They would create a dramatically sculpted and guiding entry sequence into the station. The archways would also include a clear glazed screen to help control the internal microclimate of the station. Here we have a plan of the Bishopsgate forecourt to be created, which would leave views into the station unobstructed and would also be step-free. The image also shows the two 25-person lifts provided for passengers and demonstrates the generosity of the public realm created in the proposals. These are then the views of the Liverpool Street entrance and Hope Square. As on Bishopsgate, the arches would create a dramatic entrance into the station. At Hope Square, the top of the vaults intentionally fan upwards and outwards to shift the massing and enable greater levels of daylight and sunlight to reach the ground in the square. With regards to the public realm at Hope Square, as detailed in the officer's report, there would be a substantial uplift in public realm as part of the proposals, and the existing square would be extended to deliver approximately 1,230 metres squared of resurfaced step-free public realm in this location. The existing railings, pillars, and modern lighting posts would also be removed to create a decluttered entry into the station. The south and western edges of the square would incorporate tree planting, adding softness and greening to this hardscaped area in locations which will not conflict with pedestrian movement and the spatial requirements of the square. At the centre of Hope Square, the kinder transport sculpture would be carefully relocated, making it a celebrated focal point at the heart of the square. The sculpture would also be sympathetically encircled by 3 large bespoke wooden benches, which both define its prominence and invite people to sit and reflect at this important location. Moving to Sun Street Passage, here the top drawing is a section of the existing arrangement and with the proposed section below. The lower Sun Street Passage route would come to serve as the enclosed and covered cycleway into the station cycle hub from Primrose Street, and this route would also become step-free, as referenced earlier. As earlier, this is a repeat of the images showing the historic relics, either recited or reinstated within the site. And this includes further fabric that has been removed during the 1990s works and which has been kept in storage by Network Rail, which would be reinstated as part of the proposals within the site. And here we see some of the examples of locations where such relics would be relocated, noting the listed war memorials at the centre top, the cartouches from the entranceways in the central bottom image, and then the public roof garden on the right-hand side and there, which I'll go into further detail later on in this presentation. And here we see a view back through the station from Exchange Square, demonstrating the views possible in the proposal of the enhanced station. This includes improvements to the view through removal of the 1990s upper concourse retail units. Members would also note the glazed overstation development in the background of this image, forming a backdrop to the Victorian train sheds. Turning now to the overstation development proposed. The proposed overstation development would rise to a total height of 96.67 metres and forms 13 floors of office space, a double-storey rooftop pavilion at the eastern end, and a roof garden at level 18. The proposed development is considered a tall building and sits within a context of other taller buildings and buildings of height and scale within a short local radius. A few of these include 135 Bishopsgate to the north along Bishopsgate, which reaches 81.23 metres, 100 Liverpool Street to the west, which is 66.27 metres in height, 5 Broadgate to the northwest, being 82.1 metres tall, 1 Apple Street to the northwest, being 79.6 metres tall, the recently consented 55 Old Broad Street to the south, which would stand at 103 metres tall, and Dashwood House just to the north of 55 Old Broad Street, which is 17 stories and 89 metres above ordnance datum. The proposed bulk and massing has been extensively modelled in response to townscape views, with large volumes carved away from its top corners and the corners on its southern eastern portions. This also eases the massing and bulk away from highly sensitive heritage receptors, and has also had the effect of differentiating it quite profoundly from the planar buildings of the Broadgate complex. The massing would be roughly L-shaped in form, covering the full length of the station's southern transept and extending southwards over Hope Square. The proposed height mediates between the cluster and the surrounding development to the north. It also serves to mark the station itself. Members will also note 133 to 135 Bishopsgate to the east, which was effectively an OSD for the previous works at Liverpool Street Station during the 90s. Here is a section running north to south through the site, showing the relationship of the OSD with the station. This shows the relationship between the OSD and the station interior, including the interior to its sky lobby, which serves the overstation development, as well as the backdrop buildings in the vicinity of a comparable scale. And here we have a view looking towards the development with the former Great Eastern Hotel in the foreground. The overall design intent of the overstation development is that it sits in contrast with the Grade 2 star listed former Great Eastern Hotel's ornate elevations. This is furthered by the rippling treatment of its elevations and the scooping of the southeastern corners at the upper levels. The overstation development elevations would be predominantly glazed with a refined and simple expression and material palette. Members will be able to observe here the enhanced legibility of the entrances at Hope Square and Bishopsgate. These images then show the proposed use of curved glass in further detail, which is used across the facade and shows its extent and the effect of this up close. The southern facade over Hope Square and eastern facade onto Bishopsgate would be formed from convex curved glass. The utilisation of curved glass in these important and prominent locations is considered to add greatly to the architectural quality and richness of the OSD elevations. And here we see the proposed street-level entrance to the overstation development. This shows the setback from the former Great Eastern Hotel facade on the right-hand side here, retaining an important subservience when viewed from the west. The scale of the vaulted arches used here are also diminished, appropriately deferential to the station entrance at Hope Square on the left-hand side here. And this has been achieved while providing a high-quality front door for the future office. The entrance itself is then shown in plan form here. The area in green is the main office entrance for the overstation development, featuring 3 escalators and a number of lifts, which provide for users of the office and also cyclists who will use the upper stories for their cycle parking and end-of-trip facilities. It's also important to note here that this would be step-free access and the use of drum doors in this entrance and the accessibility benefits thereof. And additionally, behind this entrance and shown with an orange arrow in the centre of this image, it would be the upper concourse level area dedicated as a public waiting area for access to the public roof garden, which I will cover later in this presentation. This image then shows the first floor, or the first floor of the overstation development and the sky lobby where the escalators would terminate. It's considered a generous space and would be double height. This area also, or this floor also, provides for further amenity for the office users, so it includes breakout meeting spaces as well as a cafe. It also includes end-of-trip facilities and cycle parking. This plan then shows a typical office floor plan. The 3 cores provide sufficient accessibility to the development and vertical circulation, particularly with regards to fire escape and evacuation. But this image also indicates in dotted lines the possibility for soft spots, which allow for further flexibility in breaking up of each of the office floor plates, allowing it to be tenanted flexibly, improving its future lettability. And this, being the top floor of the overstation development, represents the elevated public roof garden and proposed auditorium. On the bottom right-hand side, we have a zone plan with the public areas marked in blue and the areas privately used by the office marked in yellow. The roof garden overall in its entirety would be a shared space, with the western half of the roof designed as a green space typical of a public roof garden, while the eastern end would feature an auditorium and cafe. The auditorium and access to a private roof garden are considered high-quality offers, increasing the quality and desirability of the office space below. The roof would be split in use between public and private use on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and would be entirely privately used on Thursdays. This would then be followed by Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, where the entirety of this space, with the auditorium, cafe, and roof garden, in use by the public. It is considered a generous public offer in this circumstance, with total public access on Fridays and over the weekend, and additionally, that it is important for the city to provide occupiers with best-in-class office space, including this type of amenity. This image here then shows routes through the proposed landscaping for the roof garden, and I draw your attention to the lines in yellow, which indicate the ability for the public in that portion of the roof garden to have unique views of St. Paul's, to then travel north and have desirable views of the train shed and Exchange Square, but also to have their access to a changing places toilet and a toilet at all times that it is open to the public. These green spaces, as well as some of the green spaces that I've shown earlier, such as the trees in Hope Square, contribute to the urban greening factor achieved across the site. The urban greening factor, when measured across the developable area of the site, would be 0.32, in line with London Plan policy, whereas when measured across the site, including train tracks and undevelopable area, it would be 0.19. The proposal also achieves an uplift in biodiversity net gain, of which it triggers, and this would amount to a 208% increase in biodiversity. This then shows the public areas of the roof garden and the three character areas. In the one in the bottom left indicates what's termed the destination garden, which would offer views back to St. Paul's. The 3 here shows the location of the historic relic garden, which would be curated with the relics shown, some of the relics shown earlier in this presentation. And 2 is showing that a viewing point north has been maintained, so that a range of views are available for its users. Moving on to AVRs and townscape impacts. As set out in the officer's report, the proposals would cause a range of harms to a range of heritage assets, both at local level and on the skyline. These impacts are addressed in full in the various parts of the officer's report. The following slides illustrate and summarise some of these key impacts. From here, we will see a series of verified views, starting with LVMF view 17B.1 from Golden Jubilee and Hungerford footbridges. This image is in the existing circumstance. And we move to the proposed cumulative viewing experience from Hungerford Bridge. It is in this view which the proposal would be most prominent in the skyline, and here the proposal would appear just to the right of the cathedral in its skyline setting. If I can raise my cursor for just a moment, it is over to the right here. We then move to AVR view 9, which is LVMF 15B.1, which is a river prospect view from north of Waterloo Bridge. And this LVMF viewing experience encompasses the kinetic experience between the points 15B.1 and 15B.2. This is the same view in the proposed cumulative scenario. And this is AVR 10, which continues the kinetic LVMF sequence. And here we see 15.1 again in the proposed cumulative scenario. From this viewing location, the massing of the development becomes visible above the tree line and within the background of the cathedral's western front. The proposal would mostly be screened behind the cathedral and foreground tree cover, but would be slightly visible in places behind the architectural details of the cathedral's west front, as can be seen in this telephoto view, slightly eroding the legibility of its silhouette. We then move to an existing view of the Grade 2 star former Great Eastern Hotel. And the proposed view shows how the proposed OSD would affect the setting of the listed building. Note the rippling bay treatment of its long facade, echoing the inset and projecting bays of the hotel, and the deferential scoops stepping down at its upper corners. To note the prominent new station entrances, which help to visually tie the Andaz back to the station behind it. And this is the same view provided at dusk. Moving now to a view at St Botolph Bishopsgate. This is the existing view looking north along Bishopsgate of the Grade 2 Star Church and the Tower of St Botolph. Moving then to the proposed view, this shows how the proposal would affect the setting of the church tower and these long-range viewing experiences. Moving to a view from within the Bishopsgate Conservation Area. This is an existing view looking west across Bishopsgate and through the Bishopsgate Conservation Area. The proposed view shows how the proposal would be prominent in this view, affecting the setting of the Grade 2 Star Andaz and the character and appearance of the conservation area. Note the presence of the Heron Plaza Tower immediately the edge of this view, which is a 150 metre AOD tower, also in the conservation area. Moving to the view of St Botolph Church Hall, this is the existing circumstance of the Grade 2 Church Hall, showing an example of the openness that can be experienced in some of the views within this northern part of the conservation area. This view in the proposed shows how the proposal would affect those views and the setting of the church hall and wider churchyard as a non-designated heritage asset. Moving to this view, including 50 Liverpool Street and the Andaz Hotel, this is the existing view looking east along Liverpool Street, showing the ensemble of Hope Square, 50 Liverpool Street, the existing station and the arcade opposite. The proposed clearly shows that the section of the proposal within the conservation area, stepping forward over Hope Square, of a scale comparable to the city cluster, also visible in this background view. This view then also similarly shows that ensemble in the existing circumstance. And with a closer perspective on the same change in dynamism created by the proposal, and how this would affect the character and appearance of the conservation area in these views. The neo-Gothic of the station entrance would form a dramatic new set piece over Hope Square, with the office entrance stepping deferentially back towards the Andaz. Again, we have the same view provided at dusk, nighttime. And here we have the view from the existing view from within Exchange Square. The proposed view here shows the massing of the over-station development in the background alongside the city cluster towers behind. It also shows the rear step-free access into the station from the square and showing considerable distance between the over-station development and the original Victorian train shed. Again, I'll move to this view as shown at night. Here we have the existing view of the Bishopsgate entrance, showing the relationship to the former Great Eastern Hotel and the stepped and cluttered entrance to the station from this approach. Here we see the proposed with the new station entrance archways, including the step-free access into the station from this direction, and the new relationship of the station entrance to the Andaz Hotel. While the other upper levels of the Andaz would be obscured, the proposals would open up space along the northern facade of the hotel, which is currently blocked off, and create more separation between the two structures. Here we have view 39 of the same entrance and on the approach from New Street, showing how the entrance to the station, how it is obscured by the existing escalator housing. And here we have the same view, which looks through to the prominent new Bishopsgate archways, which would enable greater visibility and light into the station. Again, this would be cleared from the existing clutter and made step-free, and with the OSD's curved glass facades above. One can look through here to the entirety of the new concourse, looking into the new station, appreciating its depth and volume. This would form part of a new neo-Gothic language at the station. I'd now move on to construction and construction methodology with these images here showing the location or the indicative location of pit lanes proposed to be used during deconstruction and construction. The draft methodology for deconstruction and construction has been designed so that minimal disruption would be caused to the station itself and surrounding sensitive receptors. The need to maintain operation of the station and to ensure that impacts to neighbouring properties are minimised mean that the construction period would be expected to last between 7 to 8 years. Importantly, the earliest phases of the development comprise the station enhancements. This recommendation is also subject to those conditions related to these impacts and recommended by environmental health officers, transport officers, and Transport for London as signatory to the S106 legal agreement and as statutory authority responsible for the A10. Extensive discussion has taken place between the City of London transport officers and the applicant, as well as between the applicant and Transport for London. TfL would be signatories to the S106 agreement with the requirement that asset protection and developer agreements be entered into between the applicant and TfL prior to works commencing. In delivering extensive transport upgrades to the station itself and to all TfL lines, the proposals include significant upgrades to transport infrastructure. This slide then shows the extent of the Section 278 area to be entered into, which concerns upgrades to the Liverpool Street Healthy Streets area, and as such, wider improvements to the city's streets. Turning to servicing, the proposals include the building of an improved and extensive servicing area accessed via Primrose Street, as it is in the existing condition. This servicing area would provide for each of the uses at the station, with generous spaces for waste collection and collation, the use of cargo bikes, and back-of-house spaces available for network rail operations, the overstation development, and the new retail uses. Turning to sustainability in the development, the proposals target BREEAM outstanding rating and a minimum of 5 stars in neighbour. The proposed development would not meet the GLA standard benchmark for upfront carbon. However, carbon savings to meet and reach beyond the GLA's benchmarks are achievable by implementing significant and challenging carbon reduction initiatives to be assessed and confirmed at detailed design stages due to the complexity of the proposals. The proposed development would provide a significant improvement for the sustainability and the sustainable connectivity and accessibility of the City of London within the wider region, and thus contributes to the future-proofing of the City of London against a range of environmental, social, and economic sustainability challenges. The building responds well to climate change resilience by reducing solar gain, saving water resources, and taking up significant opportunities for urban greening and increases in biodiversity. Of course, yeah. The proposals have also been the subject of a carbon options study in line with the relevant City of London guidance, and which has been independently third-party reviewed. Moving to environmental impacts, with regards to daylight and sunlight, a range of impacts have been identified, and this slide shows sensitive receptors nearby. There have been minor and major adverse impacts experienced by the sensitive receptors identified, including at the Andaz Hotel as a commercial receptor, and residential uses to the east at 172 and 174 Bishopsgate, with this fully addressed within the officer's report. The submitted daylight and sunlight information was subject to independent third-party review by the BRE as authors of the BRE guidelines. And in summary, it's concluded that the proposals comply with adopted policy DM 10.7, London Plan Policy D6, and emerging policy D7. An extensive range of areas was also tested for overshadowing, with 3 areas having a minor adverse impact, but importantly, none of these including any public open spaces. In terms of solar glare, 1 major adverse impact was identified, and this falls across a short period of the day and also falls above any potential driver visor line, and as such is considered acceptable. Solar glare would also be the subject of a related S106 obligation, requiring a solar glare audit if necessary. On wind and microclimate, the mitigation proposed ensures that its impact is considered acceptable, and this is the same for the thermal comfort assessment which has been submitted. Moving to the conclusion of this presentation, the scheme is not any normal development project, and it involves transformation of a transport interchange and a range of impacts and harms as a result. These images demonstrate in part the failure of the station to accommodate the passenger numbers into the future at a station which experiences significant disruption and which has a low tolerance or resilience to relatively common transport disruption. It entails the loss of fabric within the station to achieve the accessibility and performance efficiency of the future station, a station which is an integral part of the city's transport infrastructure. The proposal would see the decluttering of the existing concourse, its extension and rationalisation to improve passenger flows and passenger experience, as well as to improve resilience. This would also include the introduction of step-through access throughout. There are also improvements to TfL ticket halls, step-free access to East London, as well as step-free access to East London Underground line serving the station. We would also see the removal of the existing 1990s retail units, opening up the views of the retained Victorian train shed. The proposal would deliver a wider benefits, including the following: circa 88,000 metres squared of high-quality office floor space in an eminently sustainable location. A new roof garden and auditorium offering benefits to both the public at large as well as the future occupiers of the office space. This is alongside multi-generational change to key transport infrastructure on which the city relies. It includes a new retail offer as a catalyst for the station acting as a 7-day destination. Liverpool Street Station itself is the UK's busiest railway station, with almost 100 million users per annum, and sitting on top of the Elizabeth line, which is a phenomenal number of users. These are big numbers which require a big solution. Officers believe that this is a transformational scheme in terms of transport infrastructure, with the support of both key transport and infrastructure operators, Network Rail and TfL, which will future-proof the station so that it can accommodate projected numbers across the 20-year period and beyond. The scheme is therefore recommended for approval.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kieran. That was extremely thorough, as was the officer report, which we also will have before us. And I would just like to remind members, I forgot to say this, you will have an opportunity to ask questions of officers a little bit later in proceedings, just before debate. I would hope that, as that was very thorough, you may well find some of your questions were pre-answered. I'd like to call objectors, please, to the microphone. I'm going to read out their names, which might save them a few moments of time from their allotted period. We have 6 gentlemen who wish to speak. Alec Forshaw, John McCaslam, Sir Simon Jenkins, Philip Ridley, Mark McGlynn, and Peter Norman. Gentlemen, it's up to you how you use your 10 minutes. There's only one rule, other than the maximum is 10. That is, no individual can speak for more than 5. So the green light comes on when you start speaking. We will be putting both lights on when there's 30 seconds left of the 5 minutes, but we'll reset it for each speaker. And then we'll do the same at the end of the 10 minutes. I'll let you know as well verbally, but the key thing is there is 10 minutes allowed. And I would just remind committee members and the public that very unusually we did last week allow objectors 45 minutes to come and address and answer questions from the committee. So I would hope you feel that is adequate. Over to you, Mr. Forshaw.
I speak for Save Britain's Heritage and LISCA, the coalition of heritage bodies that includes the Georgian, Victorian and 20th century societies. We consider the proposals cause a very high degree of harm to heritage assets. There is substantial harm. There are major sustainability shortcomings set out by Simon Sturgis. We believe that determination of these applications is premature for the following reasons. First, the cost of station improvement works have never been clearly isolated from overstation development. Second, TfL's letter of the 6th of August requires various matters to be resolved before determination. This includes, and I quote, detailed assessment of expected infrastructure and capacity impacts and costing any financial mitigation for additional operational expenditure that will be due to TfL. The applicant's viability report specifically excludes any allowance for compensation, as does your independent report and officer's report. Given the long and disruptive nature of construction, these payments could be huge. By example, net payments to GWR during electrification was 233 million. This doesn't include the unquantifiable costs of inconvenience to commuters or harm to the local economy, including the Andaz Hotel. Third, an alternative scheme by John McCaslam causes minimal harm to heritage assets, provides valuable offices, and allows for improvements to the station without crippling its operation during construction. More time needs to be given for all alternatives to be considered. The severe damage caused by the application proposals cannot be justified if the public benefits can be achieved in a less harmful, less disruptive, and less expensive way. You do not currently have the information to be able to make that decision. Please defer the matter. Very happy to answer questions. Thank you.
And then the next speaker, please. I'm going to introduce John McCaslin.
Thank you. Yes, my name is John McCaslin. I'm chair of John McCaslin and Partners Architects. Our specialist skills include revitalising historic stations, such as King's Cross in London, Central Station in Sydney, and Penn Station in New York. Before I refer to our team's alternative proposal for Liverpool Street Station, I would like to make a few observations on Network Rail's planning application for the station being considered today. Fundamentally, we believe Network's brief is speculative, and I'm afraid to say from the visuals we've just seen, ruinous to both the station and the context. Its supposition that the upgrades of the station require the very significant quantum of commercial space envisaged is flawed and carries with it significant risk. The result is destructive, causing irreversible harm to the listed station and context, and delivers several £100 million of negative value, a decade or more of disruption to commuters and other station users, and an outcome which is both unviable and undeliverable. Our alternative approach, an illustration here, which is entirely contained within Network Rail's ownership, matches the required station upgrades with an innovative, vaulted oversight development sitting atop the train shed, providing 2/3 of the area envisaged by Network Rail. Our design can be built in half the cost and half the time. Further, it is viable and it's deliverable, creating a surplus value with no disruptions and very limited removal of this valuable listed building station. Crucially, and unlike the Network Rail scheme, our proposal decouples the station upgrades from the oversight development, exactly as a project of this complexity should be carried out, with an approach that is therefore feasible, as well as being ecological, lightweight, modular, and reversible. Given the merits of our proposal, I respectfully suggest that Network Rail's application is deferred. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCaslin. Now I will ask for Sir Simon Jenkins to come to the microphone.
Thank you very much indeed. I just want to say two things. Firstly, I was a member of and indeed chairman of the British Rail Environment Panel that vetted the last scheme for Liverpool Street Station in the 1980s. It was bizarre, similar to what we're going through now. There was an unsatisfactory scheme. It was subject to a most tremendous public reaction to it, including a public inquiry involving John Betchman and Spike Milligan. It was viewed with great scepticism. The sort of inquiry that's going on now was undertaken then. The upshot of it was an abandonment of the original scheme, Nick Derbyshire's scheme for the train shed, which was an ingenious, fascinating and much lauded one. And the outcome, the Liverpool Street Station that we've had for the past 30 or 40 years, stood much to the credit of British Rail and the City Corporation, if I may say so. I've looked at the new scheme that you're presenting, and I've looked at the new scheme that John McCaslin's just presented. I find yours extraordinary, I have to say, that it should be more expensive than the alternative, that the alternative should be able to answer the questions required of the first scheme, I find extraordinary. Everything about it, to me, looks odd as the previous scheme, which you did not accept, looked. All I feel is that you're being presented with a choice of schemes. The second scheme, I have to admit, I like better. I think it answers your requirements more cheaply and more efficiently and more quickly. I beg you to defer it. That's the best thing to do, and it will stand greatly to your credit if you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Simon. I'm now going to call Philip Ridley to the lectern. Mr. Ridley, over to you.
Claims that accessibility interventions outweigh heritage harm lacks merit because the proposed servicing area will prevent Network Rail's recent proposals for 5 additional platforms that a safeguarded quad tracking scheme would require that could double West Anglia capacity to North London, Stansted, Cambridge and beyond. I suggest deferral to address this issue and welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ridley. Next up, Mr. Mark McGlynn. Over to you.
I will make 2 points, one procedural, one substantive. First, procedure. The planning portal now records 4,927 representations, of which 3,745 are objections. I therefore ask members to treat the written representations as the primary democratic evidence. I'm happy to share an audit-ready analysis of all representations. Second, substance, the decision hinge. Officers place real weight on the claim that the scale of overstation offices is directly linked to funding station works, and that the quantum is minimum necessary on viability grounds. That framing creates a false bind. Accept demolition-led heritage harm or lose station improvements. Members are not required to accept a financing doctrine as a planning inevitability. What is missing is a station-first, minimum harm baseline separating essential station scope, cost, phasing, and heritage impact from the commercial package in a form that you all can test. Without that baseline, public benefits cannot be properly weighed against acknowledged heritage harm, alternatives cannot be fairly compared, and enforceable delivery safeguards are certainly not secured. Accordingly, I plead with you to refuse, or at a minimum, defer until the station-first baseline and binding delivery safeguards are provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. McGlynn. And finally, we welcome back, because we saw you last week, Mr. Peter Norman.
Good afternoon, and thank you. The Andes London Liverpool Street is one of the city's heritage hotels. Network Rail have consistently and intentionally ignored the hotel when developing this application, even though this application includes works to our building. Other neighbours have been similarly ignored. At every meeting with Network Rail, they have been unable to answer our questions, and we were just told, get on the bus or lose out. I'm here today to ask a simple question: whether the public benefits of this scheme are sufficient to outweigh the harm to heritage assets, including our Grade 2 star listed hotel. Is the pain worth the end result? It is not. Network Rail's planning application is critically flawed. It delivers no meaningful improvement to station capacity or pedestrian safety. It introduces serious construction and safety risks. It is not sustainable development in modern standards or in policy. It is not viable, and the viability assessment ignores compensation costs likely to be very significant. It will significantly and irrevocably harm the Grade 2 star listed hotel and our ability to deliver a 5-star service to the City of London visitors.
15 seconds.
And will harm destination cities initiatives. The city cannot afford for this project to fail. There are clearly numerous issues that require closer inspection and too many aspects of the application that can be challenged and face further legal scrutiny.
Time is up, Mr. Norman. Thank you very much. And congratulations to the objectors for keeping within time. That could have been quite complicated. Thank you. Now, we're reminding the committee that we did 45 minutes last week of presentations and questions. You have now the opportunity to ask clarifying questions from the objectors. I will go first of all to Madhush Gupta.
Asking questions of the objectors?
Yeah, this is just asking questions of the objectors before we move on to the supporters.
Yes, just one question of the objectors. To John McCaslin. I really value your work at King's Cross. It is fantastic. Nonetheless, the application before us today is the application that Network Rail has presented, not multiple applications. And we are here to present and support it if we feel it is appropriate and well considered. Thank you.
Okay, I think that was probably more of a statement. Colleagues, if we could reserve statements for the debate section at the end, I would be grateful. But nonetheless, we did hear what you say, Madhush. William Upton.
Yes, thank you. It's also a
he's
question.
broken the microphone.
Yeah, it's obviously the
So take it with the
seriousness
moment.
of the issue, but there we go. I will just make sure I ask the question and then sort out logistics. It really comes back to this alternative point as well, because as I understand Network Rail's response, they think they've already looked at the McCausland project. And what they quoted is they ruled it out due to its engineering complexity, the impact on the operation of the train services, and its limited potential for a viable office entrance. So their response, even if we are to take it into account, is that it's the wrong option. I don't actually know what your response is to that as objectors, because they've said, look, we looked at it and we've rejected it. So I'd like to understand where you think matters actually stand.
Okay, I think objectors can choose who should answer that point of clarification from William Upton. Okay, yep, just go ahead.
Well, the alternative is the rejected alternative by Network Rail doesn't bear any resemblance to the alternative that we've come forward with. There's no comparison. I mean, there was a series of illustrations, I think, in the Architects Journal, which shows that today. It's completely different. The engineering solution is entirely different. It takes its structure through the station, which of course ours doesn't. It spans the full 90 metres across, so there is no structure and damage within the station, and so it's entirely different. So I'm not sure why it's felt to be the same scheme. It's just entirely different.
Okay, so we may have revealed a point of difference between Objector and Applicants, which I suppose isn't entirely surprising, but it is something we shall hold with us when we get to debate. Any more clarifying questions of the objectors before we move on? Please, Stephen Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. I think I heard a comment made towards the end by one objector that the Andas Hotel and perhaps other neighbours have been ignored by the applicant. And I just wanted to clarify that. It was not clear to me. There was talk of being ignored, but then there was talk of having conversations. Can we just hear a bit more about that, please, Chair?
Thank you. Was that addressed to Mr. Norman, who came last, or to... yeah, so Peter Norman, if perhaps you wanted to just address kind of perhaps when conversations and the high-level nature of them... I don't think we need to go into massive depth, but I think Stephen would like a bit more clarity, please.
Of course. So we were first made aware towards the end of 2024 through the press as well as a contact through Network Rail. Subsequent to that, through, we believe, pressure from the city, Network Rail started to engage with us, but it was very much informing us as to what they're going to do, and they didn't really answer our questions until towards the end of last year, when the engagement became a lot more productive, but then it stopped. And then through our bringing the neighbours together and walking around the neighbours to get their feedback, it became apparent that none of them had been approached.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. I'm looking around for any final questions. I think there being none, we will now move on. And we have two people who will address us from the supporters and applicants with no visual presentations. We have Ellie Burrows from Network Rail, and we have Friedrich Ludwig from Acme, the architects. Just as a reminder, total of 10 minutes, 5 minutes each. Hopefully, I'm just looking at you. Did you get the lighting system, how that works? You'll get a green light come on when you start. You'll get both lights when you've got 30 seconds, and when the red light comes on, we cut the mic. So, Ellie, your time starts now.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, Chair, Deputy Chair, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak today. I'm Ellie Burrows, Deputy CEO for Network Rail and also Managing Director for our Eastern region, where Liverpool Street Station sits. And I'm here as a representative of the rail industry and because my team on the ground knows our customers and our station best. I'm also joined by Friedrich Ludwig of Acme as our architect. If I can change the slide forward. Liverpool Street is our busiest, Britain's busiest station. It's critical to the growth of the city and London's economy. However, for Network Rail's managing its infrastructure, this brings a significant challenge for us. The station simply wasn't designed to be the busiest station. Today, Liverpool Street falls short for both our customers and our colleagues. This is why our scheme delivers transformational change, something officers are clear on in their report. We're custodians of a major transport hub, a responsibility we take really seriously. We understand how passengers experience the station, and we care deeply about Liverpool Street's history, heritage, and its future. The station is a vital part of our day-to-day lives. It's the gateway to the City of London for the East of England, East London, and Stansted Airport. It's a critical multimodal interchange, helping millions transfer from train to tube or bus. Next slide. But it needs major investment to ensure that it's fit for the future. The station was last redeveloped in 1991, and customer numbers have tripled over the last 35 years, thanks to the Elizabeth line and continued commuter growth. 115 million passengers pass through annually, and our conservative estimate shows passenger numbers growing to 158 million in the next 20 years, potentially exceeding over 200 million, double current capacity. Today, the station no longer serves our customers, the city or London as it should do. Let me set out the main constraints that we're solving. A single train delay can cause major congestion during peak time, pushing the concourse beyond its capacity. We can't offer customers step-free access. Many passengers struggle to use our station. The current layout means congestion in either our concourse or TfLs has huge knock-on effects. The connection between mainline trains and underground is confusing and inaccessible. Some customers avoid the station completely, and getting in and out isn't easy and can create significant gridlock. This isn't about replacing lifts or making minor upgrades. Piecemeal interventions simply cannot address the fundamental capacity and accessibility constraints that we face. The challenge demands a comprehensive solution. We have taken a considered and a thorough approach. Members will be aware that in the previous 2023 scheme generated very little support and didn't meet our all London TfL's operational objectives. We stopped, listened and undertook an exhaustive review. We started with a blank sheet of paper and an entirely new project team, experts who have worked on complex schemes that have become landmarks for their cities. We've undertook extensive consultation with neighbours and passengers. Their inputs have been invaluable. Our work confirmed that there is a clear need, not minor interventions, but major transformation. We've examined numerous options overlaying the operational need for the heritage concerns and carefully considering the best locations for the overall station development. Our work concluded this is the only deliverable with viable solution that can achieve these changes without affecting the Victorian train shed and without repeated closure of operational lines. If you can move forward 2 slides. Our proposals go to the very heart of fixing what makes Liverpool Street frustratingly daily. We have worked closely with Transport for London and our customers. Our scheme is operationally focused, solves infrastructure shortcomings and safeguards the remaining Victorian architecture of the majority of the 1990s roof. The transformation will increase lower concourse space by 25%, dramatically easing passenger flow and reducing congestion. Next slide. The station benefits will be delivered in the first 4 years. Crucially, the station will remain operational throughout. The office development is then constructed above. We could have accelerated the programme, but that would require station closure, and this is not an option for us. The project delivers huge public benefits with public funding constraints, creating land value and income throughout the retail and office spaces. Over 1,110 customers have supported our proposals, the highest level of support of any development in the City of London. This means for our passengers that it means wheelchair users can travel independently. When delays happen,
10 seconds.
The station can absorb pressure without crowding, clearer wayfinding and better connections. As Network Rail, we're best placed to deliver this, and the time to do it is now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Bang on time. Sorry if I hassled you at the end there. Fantastic. So next we have Friedrich from Acme. You are the architect. Sir, you have 5 minutes.
Dear Chair, dear members, my name is Friedrich Ludwig. I'm Director of ACME, based in London, Madrid and Berlin. I'm speaking on behalf of a very large design team of 200 specialists who've worked for 3 years to put these proposals in front of you together. As a team, we have great respect for the fabric of Liverpool Street Station and its evolution over time. The 1875 station was rebuilt radically twice. 1894 remodeling doubled the capacity. The 1990s remodeling transformed in a confusing customer experience into a station that was much easier to navigate. However, as you've heard from Ellie Burrows, there has been no further investment in the station since 1991. To preserve the present and future needs, Liverpool Station must embark on the next stage of its evolution. First and foremost, this is a transport project. The proposal increases station capacity, makes the station fully inclusive and operationally efficient for customers, for Network Rail, and for Transport for London. Over 2 years of work, we have modelled and tested all the operational bottlenecks on the station. This involved extensive collaboration with stakeholders, over 100 meetings with statutory and special interest groups who have significantly shaped these proposals. Secondly, this is an outstanding urban project. Traditionally, Victorian train stations turned their back onto the wider context. Towards Broadgate, towards Bishopsgate, and towards Exchange Square, the station flanks long blank walls and a fence. What we have seen in London Bridge, what we have seen in other Network Rail stations recently in St Pancras, is Network Rail can make stations more permeable, they can be more open. And that's what we're proposing to do here. The proposal is to make this an important gateway into the City of London that's permeable, not just for passengers, that allows you to experience and make Exchange Square part of your travel experience with the largest roof garden in the City of London as part of the station. Thirdly, this project delivers a great office building. We need to create the best possible office building to fund a significant part of station improvement works. Before determining where to place any development, we have analysed all the historic fabric and evaluated a wide range of options with Historic England and with your officers. We've ruled out building over the listed Andaz Hotel, the proposal that you have seen 2 years ago. It is not within Network Rail's ownership, and it's an important building in the townscape. We have explored for over a year building over the Victorian train shed. We have identified technical solutions to achieve that, but it has been too operationally disruptive for Network Rail, requiring multiple line closures. We have also been unable to make it commercially viable, despite expensive and detailed testing. So office building over the concourse is the best answer from an engineering and operational perspective. It does not affect any Victorian fabric. It only affects fabric from 1991 and has been worked collaboratively with your officers, Historic England and GLA, to evolve it into the massing that you've seen. As a result, Historic England and the GLA have done less than substantial harm and are not objecting. The new entrance restores a real sense of a brick threshold, a gateway, a feature lost in 1991, giving the station finally a clear and legible entrance again. The City of London office cluster offers a wide range of tower floor plates. We have had real conversations in the last 18 months with occupiers from Canary Wharf and the City of London asking for larger floor plates in really central locations. And this feedback and their demands have shaped the building in front of you to address a real demand. The design is highly sustainable, zero carbon in use, and with the largest landscaped area, bringing landscape in a very different way into this part of the city. The effect on the context has been carefully considered. The concourse height remains the same as Kieran has set out. The building steps away from its neighbours. It does allow for daylight to come in from the sides. The proposal delivers a greatly improved station experience, new links to Exchange Square, accessibility for all, operational improvements for TfL and all the different modes of TfL transport, and a new architectural landmark. We are delighted that these proposals have set a new record for support, and we are delighted that quite a lot of our neighbours that we have intensely engaged with have written in to support these proposals, including British Land, many trade bodies and design institutes. We hope we've managed to convey the benefits these proposals bring. We'd be delighted to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, and you came in under time, commendable. Now, I would like to again remind colleagues to be even-handed. We did offer applicants, and they took up 45 minutes last week. I know some questions were answered then. However, you may want to ask further questions now. Mujesh Gupta.
Thank you, Chairman. A question off Network Rail. Very much commend the accessibility, the design, the neo-Gothic impression, the decluttering of the station, which really opens things out. I'd just like to confirm with you, if I may, if the massing above the station is the only way we can afford the investment, the substantial investment in the common parts of the transport interchange. Thank you.
While you're coming to the lectern, if it's a new speaker from the applicant team, please do introduce yourself, but it is not, I see.
It is not this time. I can confirm that's the case. We have a very limited funding in terms of enhancements across the entire network, and we have attempted before to seek funding for Liverpool Street Station, but it isn't in the priorities of where we would nationally look for funding at this point in time, despite the constraints that we've seen there. This is the best solution that we can identify to be able to fund the project going forward.
Thank you. Alderman Alison-Gelman.
Thank you. We've had quite a lot of different figures given to us at the previous session and today about the extent that the lower concourse is being extended. I think you gave us, from Network Rail just now, 25%. Kieran gave us a figure which I was going to challenge when we get to that point, was it 90%? I mean, it's really quite important, that sort of circulation area at that lower concourse area. And I don't know whether you're comparing different figures. So it would be very useful to have a definitive figure then. And if I could have a second bite to that cherry, how will the constraint on the railway lines into Liverpool Street Station be able to cope with the increase in traffic and transport numbers that you're predicting in the next 20 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Alison.
So if I may just answer the question on the concourse area increase and then hand over to one of my colleagues. So over the last 3 years, I have learned quite a few things about how to count concourse areas. They have different qualities. They are called Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Tier 1 is the one that's most attractive to a customer. Tier 3 areas where you would wait if your train is departing in half an hour. And what we have seek to do is to increase as much as we can Tier 1, because London commuters, City of London commuters are extremely smart. They know exactly where their trains are and when they will leave, and they want to wait in the area where they can get quickest through the gate line. So we've worked hard to increase the basement concourse, which is the most important one. The areas existing and proposed for basement, if I give you square feet, if I may, basement existing is 31,000 square feet, basement proposed is 38,000 square feet, so that's an increase of 23. When we said 25, we went 23. There's slightly different ways how you can count that, depending on whether you're counting just Tier 1 or Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. So there's other ways of interpreting that, but that's what I'm giving you as a real square meter numbers. The ground floor concourse is changing from 20,000 square feet to 50,000 square feet. So that's an increase of 76%. So it's an increase of 150% on the ground floor. That is not where most passengers would wait if they're in a hurry. It's where you would wait if you have a little bit more time. So the overall increase across the entire project in terms of concourse increase is 73%. But the most important one is the basement concourse, because that's the most attractive one to customers.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee. I'm Lisa Barrett. I've been the operational lead for Network Rail on the station. Just to confirm, it's not just about physical space in the lower concourse, it's also about how we use it. We make the space where the station is most constrained outside the area of platform 1 to 10, and where it's under the most pressure with the significant numbers of interchange between Network Rail and TfL, Ticket Hall B. As Freddie indicated, we've worked really hard to make that space clutter-free, but we have relocated that important station functionality of seating, also in the lower concourse, to allow people to be able to comfortably wait, stepped back from the rush and the significant pedestrian numbers that the station does have to deal with and will need to continue to deal with in the future. In relation to the track point, Liverpool Street Station doesn't need any additional services to come into the station to facilitate the growth as presented in this application. During the last 8 years, all train operators into the station across the Network Rail estate have introduced new rolling stock, and that rolling stock has a notable additional density that they're able to facilitate on a single train. Therefore, it's critically important to Network Rail that we are able to make sure that the station is able to cater for that growth, and that growth that is being driven by the City of London, because those people, understandably, will come. And this is why this scheme is a fully comprehensive scheme, and your officers have recognised is a true transformation to the capacity of Liverpool Street, not just for Network Rail, but also within the TfL domains as well.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have any more clarifying questions we'd like to ask? I've got a few, so I'm going to see David, I think I saw your hand first.
Thank you. Just something that we didn't drill into at the session that we had the other day. I want to talk about actually how much public access there is to the roof garden, because it's being suggested that there's a significant public benefit there. But actually experience of a number of other roof gardens tells us that where capacity is limited and public access relies on ticketing and so on, actually there are significant barriers to wide public access in those spaces. I think on a proposal that we saw, it was suggested that either capacity or ticketing each day would be limited from Monday to Wednesday to 250 members of the public, and then no access on Thursdays, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday limited to 500. Is that the visitor number per day or at any one time, and what sorts of projections do you have as visitor numbers? And finally, how are you going to increase access potentially to a wider set of times? So why are you only opening at 10 a.m? And why not provide proper facilities in a wider range of times, dusk till dawn, like a proper public park? And what sort of numbers are you projecting? And how can people come in late without a ticket, without booking a week before?
Henry, are you shutting the door? I thought you were leaving, sorry. David, sorry to interrupt. Are you okay? Do you want to finish off?
It's all right, Chair. Concern for the Chief, unmerited, I think, there we are. But yeah, if you could just tell us, please, a bit more about steps you can take to make this a truly accessible public space, rather than somewhere I need to book with my kids a week in advance to come and take up one of your 250 spots. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Jeremy Randall from Newmark. We've worked with officers to optimise the public access to the roof garden. The capacity of the roof garden is limited to 750 people at any one time due to the fire strategy. We've got a very large garden at the roof. We worked with officers early on to divide that 50-50 between the public and the office tenants. There's also an auditorium that can serve circa 220 people. Our strategy was therefore to work out how one could optimise that space throughout the day, and what we worked out was to actually benefit the most number of people was to say that on Friday, Saturday and Sunday the space would be fully available to the public. The trade-off for that was then to provide some closure to allow tenants to maximise that space. So we're proposing on Thursday that it's fully closed to the public. During Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, as you said, proposed to be open at 10 a.m, which is the standard hours that the roof gardens throughout the square mile have adopted, and then with closure at circa 6 p.m. And we would envisage that those arrangements would be similar to the other roof gardens and viewing platforms throughout the square mile.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder to colleagues and applicants, we will probably have quite a few people wanting to speak during the remainder of the proceedings, so let's try our best to be concise.
Chair, may I just add, I think you asked what is the number? The number is per hour, not per day. Yep, so it's...
Okay, thank you. Tana Atkin.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We have a schedule providing the large number of supporters in a schedule for the application. Unlike the 3,799 objectors, we don't have their addresses so that we can weigh support and objection. How many people of the 1,154 objections are employees of Network Rail or another company involved in this application?
Wyn Evans from Shared Voice, who managed the engagement and consultation on this project. So, of the 1,152 supportive submissions that were submitted to the city, every single one of them included their full name, their full address, their postcode and their email address. All of them were submitted to the City of London. Of the number that have some link to either Network Rail or a company involved, it is less than 15, so less than 0.1% of the submissions came from people involved in some way involved in the project.
Thank you. I'm going to move on, I think.
Can I just ask something?
Sure.
Are we able to see that? Because when I looked at the schedule and tracked some of these names, it wasn't mentioned that they were an employee of Network Rail or Acme or a company associated with the application. I had to find that out myself. And there was certainly on the first couple of pages, there were 10. So you said there's 15 or so. I'd like some evidence of that, please.
We analysed the figures. We could find no more than 15. As far as we can tell, the vast majority of those as well are not people involved directly in this project. They are basically colleagues of people who were working on the project. But as far as we can tell, there are less than 15 of those. That's 0.1% of the supportive comments.
And there may be a question for officers about, because obviously what we rely on in terms of planning policy is officers' summary and weighting of the overall objections and application and letters of support. So it may be that there is something officers later can just explain in how they are treated when it comes to the pack that we rely on in this meeting. I'm going to now go to Gabby Roberts-Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Can I please ask the applicants, can you provide more detail on the proposed accessibility and what level of engagement took place during the design evolution, please?
Good afternoon. So in relation to the accessibility, Network Rail as the client were very clear that we didn't want this just to be a scheme that looked at the step 3, but was looking to make the station accessible for all. And not just to do a small minor modification in that respect, but to make it transformational as recognised by your officers. As part of even before that application began, Network Rail was already understanding from those with lived experience the challenges that the station faces or causes for those who might wish to use it. And we could see from our own extensive pedestrian flow survey analysis that the station was not being used by as many as you would hope it would be. As such, and supporting this application, we were also very honest with the challenges that the station has and submitted as part of our needs assessment an accessibility-focused one, which looked not just at accessibility, but the equal provision that you would want with accessibility as well. During the design and development process, we had significant continued engagement with those of lived experience, which Lizzie will be able to cover how that informed some of the design changes as we went through.
Good afternoon, members. Lizzie Hughie, part of the ACME team, the architects for the scheme. As Lisa mentioned, during the design process, we extensively worked and met with various accessibility groups. We had 3 meetings with COLAC, we had 1 meeting with BEEP, and we had various other meetings with other accessibility groups. During those meetings, we discussed lived experiences and experiences from mystery shoppers to understand the challenges that people are experiencing caused by the infrastructure, and the team really listened. Worth noting also that during the whole design process, we were supported by a specialist accessibility consultant who really guided us and advised us with the design. Direct results of feedback given by various members and panels were locations of the assistant lounges, the multi-faith rooms, family rooms within the station. The fact that we have changing places toilets on both concourse levels as well as the roof level are a direct result from the feedback that we were given during those meetings. We worked through them on adequate seating areas, so to provide sufficient shelter and quiet areas where people can sit when they need a more quiet area, but also still have a visual relationship to the main concourse space and direct access to customer information boards. The wayfinding strategy was revised and updated following feedback. And then a major one is lift capacities and lift location. That means that lift sizes were increased to make sure that a person in a wheelchair is able to turn around within the lift without having to do that on the concourse space and then potentially impeding on the passenger flow, but also allowing wheelchair users to use the lifts together with other passengers in that lift. The design is there to ensure coherent, intuitive and inclusive passenger environments within the station.
Great, thank you very much. I think the last question hand I saw was William Upton.
Thank you. bothered about the viability way that this has been approached. Apparently, that it's justification for what's being put forward, because as I understand it, the viability assessment comes out with the fact you're underwater by 200 million, and yet it does seem to leave out there's no revenue in the viability assessment from extra passengers. There's a lot of things that apparently aren't there. And I'd be grateful to know how is it that you say this scheme is actually buildable if it's being put forward as a negative viability. So what it is you say that still means this gets delivered. And also there's the compensation issue that apparently is left out of account. There's a lot of numbers that don't seem to be before us. So how can we actually not think you're just going to come back for something else? Because that sort of also leads to the point that someone mentioned that there might be another 5 platforms that Anglian Rail might want. How does that fit into what's being proposed here? Is it that there might be further schemes coming forward, or are we basically saying this is the alteration of the concourse that anyone can expect? And finally, obviously, McCausland's project, as I understand it, could be built. You've given reasons that you say there are complications, but the historic impact that his project would do obviously would be different to yours, and to some extent remove, and it's being said would remove the impacts that yours is. I don't understand you to be rejecting his scheme on historic impact grounds purely on the fact that you've looked at other projects, not his, on the engineering terms. So sorry, there were sort of 3 points there about what it is that viability you're actually relying on. Secondly, about the 5 platforms, and thirdly, this alternative scheme.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions. While the applicants are coming up, I would just say on viability, from a committee and planning perspective, the reason we officers in the officer report mention viability, it's in order to, is the station development justified in terms of viability of the scheme. In terms of the applicant's economic viability with their own parcel funding, that's a slightly different matter for them. And I would counsel that it is very often the case that this committee approves schemes that haven't even been funded. So it's not an unusual position to be in. I will, however, ask the applicants to come up. If you could be concise in your responses, please. I don't know who wants to answer them.
Apologies. I will just start with just a couple of the key points and then hand over to Ushma. So firstly, in the point of compensation towards train operators that has been raised today, that only occurs where trains are proposed to be cancelled. It is a mechanism for us to give our industry partners compensation towards lost fare revenue. And also to cover any costs of alternative arrangements such as rail replacement buses. Our scheme has been carefully designed so as to not close the station and to keep it operable throughout so that it continues to serve the city. Therefore, there is no material schedule for compensation as it is known to be paid to the train operators. In relation to the 5 platform piece, that refers to studies that took place in the early 2000s and have been subsequently overtaken by newer studies that show that the new on-train capacity that runs into Liverpool Street will deliver the passenger growth, and should there need to be additional services down the West Anglia main line, that they are most economically viable in a Crossrail 2 format, for which the combined powers of Network Rail, TfL, have continued to safeguard. Those studies took place that are referenced, like I said, somewhere between 2005 and 2010. We don't currently need additional platforms at the station. Oh, sorry, and ticket fare revenue. So yes, as the industry grows, there would be a presumption that would be increased ticket fare revenue. That, of course, also needs to be considered in the balance of running the operational railway, which, as is a public service, is currently heavily subsidised by government. And therefore, increased fare revenue would be looked to reduce the public subsidy that the rail industry would need, and therefore allow additional public spending on other critical services and infrastructure. It's not directly comparable, nor able to be ring-fenced by Network Rail and the industry to enhance the rail asset base.
Thank you. Ushma.
Thank you. I'll be very brief just to touch on the viability position that we're in. Thank you, Chair, for clarifying. It's not unusual typically for a city scheme to come to the city or to come to planning as presented as viable. We view the viability position as marginal and have run and demonstrated sensitivities on the viability. We've got a lot of confidence in the growth of the market, given that there's only a 2% vacancy rate across the city, where demand is outstripping supply at present, and that actually this office building is needed in its own right, other than looking to support such transformational change at the station. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we have members from... No, sorry, sir. John...
There was one additional point.
Oh, did you? Well, John, William, it's up to you. What would you like answering?
Well, it was trying to tease out what it is about the McCausland project that they looked at. You may recall.
John, you are not invited to the lectern. You had your time. This is the applicant's time. Friedrich.
So we've worked with WSP as engineer, with AKT2 as engineers, and with ACOM. So we've had quite extensive amount of engineering expertise and knowledge into looking building over the train shed. So the structural options we've looked at included everything from spanning all the way from the outside of the outside station box on one side to the other side, to trying to use the first set of columns, so a 90-meter span or 66-meter span or variations thereof. We've looked at different ways, whether it's an arch, whether it's a space frame truss, like you will have seen above Moorgate Station, or other versions of supporting a building above the train shed. And we have costed them, and we have looked at them from an operational point of view with Lisa Barnett's team, the Network Rail team, and the Eastern Anglia route. The Network Rail team have been very clear with us that it's not possible to close more than 2 platforms for more than 4 weeks at an absolute maximum. So that's what we've modeled this as a kind of staging sequence, which we think is a realistic amount of disruption to the Network Rail operations that can be done in probably the next 4 years before kind of travel increases too much. What has come out of the assessment of structure and cost and value is that while we are structurally able to support a building above the train shed, it does obviously affect the real Victorian fabric, not the 1991 Victorian fabric. It is not viable. It is not viable because it has a slightly lower value than an office building over the concourse, because the entrance to that office building is highly constrained and it's a very long walk to get there. So we can't quite achieve the same rates per square meter, and the cost to build it are higher than the building we're trying to put forward and showing you today over the concourse. So it's a combination of a slightly higher cost to build and a slightly lower income. We think we have high confidence in the numbers that Gleeds as cost consultant and JLL have put together in terms of assessment of rent and in terms of values. I do not believe that there is a building that could be built in that position for half a price of what our professional team have concluded.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to move on to the 2 representatives from Bishopsgate Ward. Gentlemen, you'll be aware of time. Hopefully you will be to the point, but it's... Sorry, Polly. Can we just, colleagues, agree that if this meeting overruns the 90-minute, the 2-hour point, we're okay to extend it a little bit? I'm just looking around. That's done and dusted. So moved you were by the application that 2 members unusually are coming to take up the right to address this committee. Simon Burrow.
Chairman, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen, Liverpool Street Station is now a principal gateway into our world-class city, but is clearly not fit for purpose. A major constraint to growth, as well as hugely frustrating for passengers. We can't afford to kick the can down the road. That is why I'm here to support this application, while recognising it is only the next step in a long and complex process, particularly for engagement and refining the construction plans to minimise their adverse impact on its users and neighbours. The current station, while having specific aspects worth preserving, is tired and incoherent, reflecting the piecemeal addition of features over the years, and its complex layout causes even regular station users to get lost at times. Looking at old photographs shows how much the station has changed over the years. As mentioned earlier, the 1991 aerial photo shows 2/3 of the current station flattened to the ground. The current limitations of the station have been well stated, so I won't repeat them, beyond saying that the lack of capacity and resilience in operations makes it the city's Achilles heel, not always visible as such, but a critical weakness. The best stations are now destinations in their own right, rather than just transport hubs. If properly implemented, this application will enhance the station as a landmark and destination asset. Look at what's been possible with St Pancras, King's Cross, Paddington, London Bridge and others, and the brilliant connected developments adjacent to Liverpool Street at Exchange Square and Broadgate Central. I am a real supporter of heritage, living in a Victorian house and volunteering as a historical archivist. The early 1990s redevelopment was in some respects too well done, significantly extending the 1894 train shed roof, erecting the so-called McDonald's building and the Twin Towers behind Hope Square. While attractive in their own ways, these reproduction Victorian assets must not limit the ambition and effectiveness of this scheme. I also commend the plans to reinstate many historical artefacts currently located off-site. The station's real heritage asset is the Andaz Hotel, which, as we've heard, is ring-fenced from this application, even though its freehold is owned by Network Rail. The Andaz will suffer significant prolonged disruption during construction and permanent detriment in some respects of natural light and views in its rooms. This is a major commercial issue for its top-class operators at Hyatt Group, and I urge Network Rail to significantly ramp up its engagement and cooperation with the Andaz Hotel. Final point I would like to respond on is financial viability, even though that isn't directly a planning consideration, as already mentioned. Long-term predictions are pretty much impossible, but this is a fundamental scheme to the whole UK economy and will unlock significant growth. Network Rail and government stakeholders would not let this scheme fail, given its importance and profile. In conclusion, Liverpool Street redevelopment is absolutely critical to city growth, and I ask the committee to approve this application. Thank you very much, Simon. We're going to reset the clock, and Deputy Murphy, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. From everything we've heard here today, I think we can all agree that Liverpool Street Station's continued success is critical to both the City of London and the UK economic prosperity. The 98 million passengers which now passed through the station last year are fueling the government's growth agenda, and the forecasts show that passengers are set to rise exponentially in the years ahead. This application also helps us to achieve the City Corporation's corporate plan in delivering dynamic economic growth, leading sustainable environments, creating vibrant, thriving destinations, and crafting flourishing public spaces. Like many, I've commuted into Liverpool Street Station daily for the past 25 years and have had to navigate the buckets of water which line the route to collect rainfall. I've had to struggle carrying buggies and wheelchairs and suitcases upstairs because the lifts and escalators aren't working, and I've had to beat a path across the insufficiently sized concourses in the chaos of rush hour or at weekends during major sporting events. Sadly, the station is no longer fit for purpose. It cannot adequately provide what we need for the future. Indeed, Network Rail's own settlement with the government has moved the asset maintenance of the station into managed decline. So the case for investment and improvement are, in my opinion, very clear. As local councillors, we've been involved in discussions about the station's future, considering how people use the station as we build out our destination city strategy to create a thriving hospitality and cultural hub 7 days a week. If I may, I'd like to comment on the planning process, which has been referred to today. I'm aware that letters outlining the application and consultation were sent by the City Corporation to 4,667 residential properties in EC1, EC2 and EC3, in addition to the 12 public locations around the station which had formal notices displayed and the press notices published in City AM. In addition, Bishopsgate ward members have promoted engagement via social media, newsletters and hundreds of conversations with interested parties. This is distinctly separate from the work conducted by Network Rail's engagement team, and I note that specifically because our team wished to reflect upon the lack of local business engagement directly from Network Rail, which has caused some real local frustrations. As councillors, we've met with architects, Transport for London and Network Rail several times on site and online, walking through the plans to discuss risk and issues. This has included detailed discussions on construction sequencing, accessibility impacts, noise and vibration, dust control, and impacts on other trains, buses, taxis, and pedestrian routes. Turning to the application itself, there are clearly impacts that must be acknowledged. The loss of the heritage features, the implications of building over the station, the effect of an estimated 8-year construction period, and the consequences for the Andaz Hotel's commercial operations. On heritage, Liverpool Street has evolved repeatedly over its long history. While reasonable people may differ on matters of architectural taste, in my view, the proposals are sympathetic to the Victorian character of the station, and any identified heritage harm is outweighed by the substantial public benefits delivered by the scheme. On building above the station, the square mile is defined by the careful coexistence of heritage and modern architecture. A construction process of this duration will inevitably have impacts, but it appears the only realistic option of getting the station to remain operational throughout. I would really urge Network Rail to continue giving careful thought to the passenger experience. The concerns of the Andaz Hotel have been well articulated today, and I will not repeat them. However, if the application is approved, I hope the committee will make clear its expectation that appropriate mitigation is secured through conditions and legal agreements. I would also encourage the swift resolution of the scheme's financial viability and note that any future applications seeking to extend the development to generate additional income are likely to be viewed unfavourably. Ultimately, members, your committee's task is to weigh those impacts against the benefits. I believe they are substantial, as outlined very well by officers today. Ultimately, this application will secure Liverpool Street as the UK's most important station. In our discussions with local residents, there have been strong and consistent support for this scheme. Those who choose to live in Bishopsgate understand it is a dynamic and evolving part of the city, and that they benefit from the world-class transport, culture, hospitality, public spaces, all on their doorsteps. In conclusion, members, any redevelopment of a nationally significant asset will raise concerns. The challenge is to address them properly, mitigate impacts wherever possible, and deliver a scheme efficiently that is sustainable and fit for the next generation. For those reasons, I confirm the unanimous support of the Bishopsgate's non-voting aldermen and councillors, and I urge your committee to approve the application today. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Murphy. Colleagues, do we have any questions for Ben or Simon, or can we move on? There being none, now is the opportunity, should you have any, bearing in mind the thoroughness of the report, to ask clarifying questions of our officers regarding their report. I'm going to take them all, I think, and then officers can reply to them in the round. I'm going to take Alison Gowman and then Tana.
Thank you very much. We know that the carbon footprint, the embodied carbon in the new development is poor. It fails the GLA and other benchmarks, but Kieran in his opening remarks did say that there were ways in which we could work on this, or it could be worked on by conditions through the planning approval or the planning system and process from here on in. Could Kieran please give some indication as to what that will mean, how that can be enforced, and what prospect that is of reducing that from the figure that it is at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure you're taking notes. Tana Abkin.
Yes, we've been told that there's 15 people that were in support of the project that work for Network Rail or others involved in the, with the applicants, albeit they aren't directly involved in the project. Can you tell us who they are, please, so I can weigh up properly the support that has been recorded? Because if it's recorded from Network Rail, it may be that that's a different weight compared to a member of the public or a commuter who has said something else.
Thank you, Tana. Any more clarifying questions for officers? William Upton.
Just to check, no one's putting forward an exceptional case, are they? This only could go forward if it was decided there wasn't substantial harm to the listed buildings. As far as I can see, there's no canvassing of an argument that there's, if there was substantial harm, that this could be approved. I just wanted to have confirmed on that. And then the question on the viability, it would be helpful to understand what account is taken of the fact that there might be increased passenger revenue. There are other compensation issues that, if it's been said, for instance, other schemes are rejected because they're not viable, clearly the choice of a particular scheme relates to viability, relates to what the alternatives are. So helpful to get clarification on where we should conclude in the officer's view on that point.
Thank you, William. I'm going to now go to officers to respond to those three people and slightly more than three questions.
Thank you for the question, Addison. So you rightly point out that the embodied carbon exceeds the GLA's benchmark. This is quite typical for large-scale city buildings, all the towers that we have.
Could you just lean into the microphone a bit? I appreciate they're quite short.
So all the large-scale buildings we have recently approved are in the same region of embodied carbon, and we normally see a large potential of reducing carbon through the detailed design stage, and we have added, in this case, very specific conditions to this application, for example, with relation to possibilities to use CLT, which would bring the carbon down, or using lightweight concrete. And there are some other opportunities that the applicants have pointed out that can be determined throughout the detailed design stages of the development.
Thank you. Okay. Next question, I think, was on the number of people in support potentially from Network Rail, I believe. David.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, no, we don't actually have the details of any association of representations received. We obviously do require that their names and addresses are provided on any letters of representation, whether it's in support or objecting, and therefore that's what we have received to all those submitted to the City Corporation, and we have afforded them weight. It is important, obviously, to note that the number of objections or letters of support don't add weight to them. It's all about what the content of those representations. So we don't look into beyond the name and address of those representations in terms of their association.
I just want to ask about that, because giving weight to either an objection or a support indication means reading that document, which I have actually read all of them, and if you don't know, and someone's not telling you, one of them says, I am a regular commuter to Liverpool Street Station, and by Googling that person and looking on LinkedIn, I saw that they were an employee of Acme, and I also found others which I can name, and I do query whether there are in fact only 15, but if it's somebody from Network Rail whose colleague is involved in the plan, that may mean that I look at that support differently to an ordinary commuter who's coming through Liverpool Street Station. And what you're saying is we haven't done that. Is that what you're saying? We haven't done that. We haven't checked that any of these people work for Network Rail, Acme, or any of the other associated companies involved in the application.
Thank you. David?
No, that's right. We haven't checked the association with them. Obviously, we received hundreds and thousands of letters saying the same principles in support of the application itself. So therefore, we have taken that into account in terms of commuters and how they use the station and what they see the benefits of being. So we do assess all those individual letters, and all those individual letters are reviewed by officers.
Thank you. And I think there were a couple more questions for officers to answer. I think one on, was it a heritage question? Tom?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. So just on the point about substantial harm or the exceptional test, members will be aware that substantial harm is a very, very high bar. It amounts to either the near or total loss of a heritage asset or the total loss of a key aspect of significance. Now, in this case, there would be a range of works the station has been detailed, including the creation of the new entrances in the OSD above, and the removal of fabric, which would have a range of impacts, both negative and positive, set out in the officer report. If substantial harm existed, one would expect Historic England to have identified this, and they have not in this case. They have, like officers, identified a high level of less than substantial harm and have not formally objected on this basis. So as such, officers consider that the works of the station would not as individual items or cumulatively amount to substantial harm. The proposals instead would cause a high level of less than substantial harm to the station, and the subsequent test then in the MPPF is to consider whether the harm is outweighed by the public benefits of the proposals. Thank you.
Okay, and then the final question, I think, was on the viability from Mr. Upton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll take that again. Yes, I think in terms of the viability of the scheme itself, and I think as we heard, more a case of developer risk, effectively. The submission of the financial viability assessment did include a sensitivity analysis, and that demonstrated how, in the future, a potential scheme could be viable. And so that's, again, less of a matter for officers to consider, but as the Chair pointed out, it is about the financial viability, but it was about demonstrating the minimum amount of floor space to build to deliver the station benefits. And in terms of the alternative scheme, again, I think as we heard from the applicants, they've reviewed a variety of alternative schemes, including one in the location over the Victorian train sheds, and they looked at both viability and the feasibility of that. And obviously then that has been taken into account by the applicant in their decisions which scheme to pursue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So there was all the questions we had from the committee. Now we come to the, I suppose, debate section. I would suggest that after approaching 2 hours, people are probably getting to a position where they know what they think, and it is, of course, your right to persuade your colleagues otherwise if you so are moved. Is there anything anyone would like to raise in this section of the meeting? Tana Adkin.
If I may remain seating.
Yeah,
that's all right. So I just wanted to assist the members with assessment of indications of support from the schedule. So if I can take members to supplementary pack 3, where you have your schedule of recordings of objections and indications of support. If I can take you to page 2, you'll see at the top, you should see at the top the name Andrew Ferry, if we're all there.
Do carry on.
Yes. If you go to the name James Verfuth, or Firth, he starts as a Fellow of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors and formerly a Fellow of the Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportations. He then goes on to commend the scheme. He is in fact a senior development manager for Network Rail, and prior to that worked for LCR and now works for Platform 4. If you go down the page to the next...
Sorry, Tana.
Yes.
This is a debate section, so it's not really a chance to be reading out great sections of the report. If there's a point you want to make, I would encourage you to please make it concise.
Well, there are, just so that the members can assess arguments in support,
But perhaps you could summarise them as opposed to reading them all out.
The officers, well, it's just when you read that support, you know that that person works for Network Rail or ACME.
I understand, but there must be a concise way of phrasing this.
Yes, you don't know because you haven't been told by our officers. I've looked them up.
Point of order.
Mr. Moss.
Could we get clarification from the legal officer how we're to approach the representations made? Because my understanding is we need to view our legal duty is to view everything on its merits in terms of the substance of the arguments put forward, not to analyse any subjective motive or otherwise to interrogate who has written what.
Okay.
Could we get some clarification on
Yeah,
that?
if the legal officer could just clarify that point, what it is actually we are relying on here, please.
Hi, members. Fleur Francis from the Comptrollers and City Solicitors Department. I understand the point that the member is trying to make in terms of the weight that she is looking at giving to the actual number of objections and where that is going. But I think, as Mr. Hawken has tried to explain, it's not merely a numbers game. You need to look at what they're saying, what the material planning considerations are, and those who have set out, and those that are supporting versus those that have objected, and sort of reach a conclusion on that.
Okay.
My advice.
Yes.
So, Tana,
Exactly.
what's your kind of... there must be a nub here that you're trying to get
Yes,
to.
the nub of it is, if somebody's a commuter or uses Liverpool Street Station, or they are giving an explanation for why they feel the way they do, that's one thing. But when there's an objection simply on the basis, and you'll read them, and they're simply an employee of Network Rail, I think the panel and the committee should know that.
Okay, noted. And I think it might be worth saying the counterpoint could that be the number of objections that came in from people who have very little to do with London, in fact, including my favourite quote from a lady, I think it was a person from the Isle of Wight. So it's just worth saying that there is a counterbalance on both sides of the boundary.
Exactly.
And I would suggest perfection in this case, in terms of the summary, is probably the enemy of the good here.
I agree. So people that live out of London who've never been to Liverpool Street Station, again, the weight to be given to their objection would be counterbalanced. So I agree with you, Tom. But I do say that it's on looking at those, there's a significant number of people that work for Network Rail, and they haven't identified themselves. They haven't said, by the way, I work for Network Rail, which I think would be far better to be open and transparent.
Thank you, and thank you for saying that. I think that was important that you were heard. Anything else that people would like to say in the debate part? Gabby Robertshaw.
I cannot fail to be moved by the passion of the objectors in the heritage lobby that we've heard today. I am, after all, a weekly beneficiary of the wonderful transformation of St Pancras and King's Cross stations. However, they received massive government funding as part of the HS1 scheme, and they've been further enabled by the development of the goods yard at the back. I'm sure many of you will have been to Kingsdrop Yard, Coldrops Yard, for example. The Shard, when it opened, that was a real go-to place. But how many of you are aware that that is an enabler for the work that was done to London Bridge Station, in addition, again, to a massive government handout as part of the Thameslink scheme? Colleagues, Liverpool Street Station has no brownfield site. It has no government handout. That's gone up to the Northern Rail powerhouse scheme that's going to be coming in. this scheme gives us the opportunity to provide a world-class station for our workers, for our residents and for our visitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. William Upton, your hand was up.
Oh, yes, thank you. I find this is a good scheme struggling to come forward. I think everyone can identify there's huge improvements that Liverpool Street needs to have. But I do find I am troubled by this point about the viability, because at one point it's what's justifying the harm, and then we're told it's just developer risk. We know there is no exceptional case being put forward. I think it probably could have been, but clearly not the way it's been put forward. The level of harm, well, officers take a much more different view to historic England, the GLA and the historic buildings when it comes to the entrance. One can see at 11246, they actually think it's somehow positive, where the GLA, historic England, historic buildings, places and other objectors consider it the new scale of that entrance to be harmful. We are able to disagree on the level of harm. I think we have to anxiously consider what's happening to the hotel, which seems to have been dismissed because it's a commercial use rather than actually something that people are going to be using in terms of bedrooms. This is a really tricky scheme to justify. I don't think we have the information before us to do that. And I think the level of harm is greater than the officers are actually putting forward. And yes, it's left to us to decide by Historic England. That's, I think, all that we need to conclude. But given the huge uncertainties about the viability and what's been put forward, I know there's the great goal of the improvements, but I don't think this scheme is what we should be accepting.
Thank you, Mr. Upton. The last hand I saw, which will be the last hand, is the Deputy Chair of the Committee, Shravan Joshi.
Thank you, Chair. This is a scheme like no other that I've seen coming in front of committee since I joined in 2018, because at its heart lies infrastructure as opposed to just another tall building or another development. And I think we've got to think about infrastructure not just as the impact it has on the red line, but actually on the wider impact that infrastructure has on the city around it. Liverpool Street Station, within a 500-metre radius of the station, has hundreds of retail outlets. 30% of those retail outlets are independents. They are not what are called multiples. They are independent retailers, small shops, small businesses that are dependent on their owners for their survival and their cash flows. The nearest example that we have of an equivalent scheme coming through is actually in Moorgate, when the Elizabeth Line box appeared in that area. Since the Moorgate box appeared, footfall has gone up by 17%. 17% footfall increase in the Moorgate area. The retail transactional increase since the Moorgate box appeared has gone up 7%, feeding that ground floor retail. And understand that in Moorgate now, they now have the lowest vacancy rate of ground floor retail anywhere in the square mile. I would say that is a direct result of infrastructure investment. And I would expect the same to be happening here. This is not just about feeding transport links for the big bankers and the lawyers who work in the Great Ward of Bishopsgate, but actually it's to help those small businesses in our proximity. When we look at Destination City's ambition, it is to bring up and enliven that ground floor, help those small businesses through, and this scheme, to my mind, delivers that. If we lived in a more gilded age, perhaps when the station was first envisaged, we would have the money from government to actually pay for the station in all of its glory, but we just simply do not, and we have to be pragmatic and realistic in our expectations. That overstation development, in my view, performs that financial viability to enable that infrastructure development. And that's where I think we ought to focus our energy, is on where those numbers come from. If I go back to when the Elizabeth Line first came up, none of us would have envisaged the success of that infrastructure. Nearly half the population of China has travelled, the equivalent of, have travelled on the Elizabeth Line. None of us would have said that when it first came up. And we would expect that growth to continue if we do plough into future infrastructure investment. On that basis, Chair, I will be supporting this application as it stands.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Let me bring this to a conclusion. I will just say something. And my reason for me contributing is I am a power user of the station. I live locally. It's my nearest train station and interchange. I walk through it almost every day when I come to Guildhall. I go to Norwich on it. I go to the airport on it, and I know it. And it is a dreadful station. It's in a terrible state of disrepair. It absolutely, as I suspect everyone probably agrees with, needs something doing. And now you've heard from Siobhan, I can now confirm that all of the members of Bishopsgate Ward, or councillors and aldermen, are, I believe, now in support of this application. And I do think that counts for something, as we are on the ground. We do talk to the residents. We do talk to business. So, colleagues, on the one hand, this could be complicated. We have heard things about tall buildings, or even though to Finsbury Avenue just across the road is much taller. We've heard things about conservation areas, even though there's just a toe of this in one. We've heard things about landlord and tenant disputes, which don't really come into our considerations today. We've heard about listed buildings. Well, I think it was 19%, was it? Maybe slightly less of a listed building from the 1990s, by the way, will be removed. And I would just ask members to remember the Barbican has 100 listed toilets, and they're awful. So listing isn't necessarily the panacea that some people think it is. I am concerned when I've read through some of the letters of objection about two things. The first is an undertone here that we should be preserving stasis. Colleagues, stasis kills cities. We know this better than anyone else in the City of London. And I'm also concerned at some of the language we've seen in the copy and paste campaign that we've received, which essentially has suggested that a lot of people seem to think a Victorian station is being demolished. It is not. We have eyes. We've been there. We've seen the photographs. It was largely rebuilt with far more damage, by the way, done in the late 80s and early 90s. And by the way, why is a new station okay for the Victorians and okay for people 40 years ago, but somehow a new station isn't okay for people in the city today? I think city workers deserve a new station too. So you will be unsurprised to know that I am firmly in favour of this excellent application. So I am now going to bring us to a vote, and that is, I suggest we proceed to a vote based upon the officer recommendations before you. I remind members that a minor amendment to the recommendation was set out in paragraph 1 on page 1 of the addendum report that was circulated earlier today, and that therefore is the recommendation specifically we are being asked to vote on. In summary, officers are recommending that members resolve that the Planning and Development Director be given delegated authority to issue decision notice granting planning permission for the proposed development and the 5 listed building consent applications, subject to the matters set out in the recommendation. As I said, the full wording of the recommendation is set out on the page of the first addendum if members do need to refer to it. I think hopefully that is clear, just checking colleagues are aware what you're voting on. Very good. Could all those, therefore, in favour of the officer recommendation, please raise their hand? Keep them high, we will count them. And have you got the count? I think so. Okay, and those against? Thank you. And those abstaining? Let me check the numbers. The numbers are 4, 19. Against, 3, 0 abstentions. Planning permission and listed buildings consent is granted. Okay, it's up to the public if you wish to stay for the last remaining moments of our meetings. Colleagues, item 5, 6 and 7, 5 and 6 are starred. There's no debate, I think, required. They're for information. Do we have any questions relating to the work of the committee? We do not. Any other business? I'm not aware of any. Can I just commend the committee on your conduct and your deliberations today? It was a really constructive and thoughtful meeting, tough questions, and we got to a clear and decisive result. Congratulations, and thank you for your time. Meeting closed.